Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pigskin Pick'em 2018 Week 5 rundown right here on the Rattleichin Broadcasting Network. You know, if you've been listening to us for the past 5 weeks, you know how this is going to go down. We're going to talk a few bits of NFL news, and then we're going to kind of dive into our discussion about what's happening in our Pigskin Pick'em through Yahoo. Some surprising stuff happening this past week. Seen some big movers and shakers, a couple prominent movers and shakers, as a matter of fact. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But first and foremost, the MVP of the Rattleichin Broadcasting Network. Pat, welcome back this week. How you doing this evening?
When in doubt, call Totally 80s, Pat Mullin.
That's right, man. That is right. I first off want to thank you again for coming back on here and offering your podcasting services for the Pigskin Pick'em rundown. So we'll kind of hop into it. We had a rather landmark week happen in the NFL. We had a record that was broken and captured by one Drew Brees of the New Orleans Saints. He is now the owner of the most passing yards held by a quarterback. In his game, they're playing, I can't remember who the Saints were playing against. I don't have the schedule in front of me. The Redskins, that's right, because they routed the Redskins. Here
on Columbus Day, mind you.
Oh, goodness. I did see that little bit of an exchange between you and Jed. I saw
on Columbus Day, whoopings were given to the Redskins, the Braves, and the Indians. Can't make this stuff up, folks.
That's right. 2018. He broke Peyton Manning's record of 71,940 career passing yards and did it with a 62-yard strike to Traquan Smith or TD. This guy's been in the league, I think, as said, since 2001. 2001. So 17 years in the league, 18 counting this year. 5 years as a Charger, 13 years as a New Orleans Saint. Boy, I would love to have a team that I could call my own that had a freaking quarterback for 13 years. That would be wonderful. But the New Orleans Saints are able to claim that Drew Brees, and this was a pretty big deal. I mean, my goodness, he was in the company of Peyton Manning. I think Tom Brady is up there as well.
And Brett Favre.
And Brett Favre. So what'd you think of this, Pat? I mean, you got any thoughts on Drew Brees becoming this record holder, and will he hold it?
Very, very cool for one of the nice guys in the NFL to get such a big deal record. As far as holding it, records are made to be broken. With each passing decade, we've seen this become more and more of a passer's league. So I would bet very heavily against it. I don't know who's active behind Brees on the list that would have a chance to surpass him in the shortest time frame, but I would very seriously doubt he holds that record for very long. Not a knock on him. It's just, especially in today's league climate, that's a record made to be broken. It's an emphasis on the passing game. He got that from playing in an air raid style offense for the last 13 seasons by and large. And there was some talk about where he sits among the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I don't think he's in that argument, not to be dismissive of him. Again, I think he plays in a style that is designed for him to hold a record like this in an offense in an era where that's the way it should go. But someone made the argument, is he the best under 6 foot quarterback? And that's a very realistic argument to me, all due respect to Doug Flutie.
I hear you. I did bring up the list here. I do have, thanks to ProFootballReference.com, they have the list of passing leaders right now. Obviously, Drew Brees, we just talked about that. Peyton Manning second. Brett Favre third. So he won't be eclipsing that record unless he comes out of retirement, which don't put it past him. Tom Brady sitting in fourth, and he's about 5,000 yards, 5,000 yards behind Drew Brees right now. Dan Marino at 5, Eli Manning at 6th. But man, we are talking a very big drop off here. He's at 53,000 yards. Drew Brees has 72,000. There's only 3 years between. I think Eli Manning came in 3 years later. Yeah. Then we have Big Ben at
also an 04 product,
and sitting in 8th, another 04 product, Phillip Rivers. So in the top 10, we have 5 quarterbacks that are still playing today. I don't know I haven't heard any retirement talk around Drew Brees. That's for sure. It doesn't sound like he's winding down, in my opinion. But you never know. Peyton Manning, I think a lot of his reason for retirement, number one, was the neck injury. That was pretty bad. But I don't know where you cap the life of a quarterback. I think now, as we've talked about before, the way these refs are with the quarterbacks may have a longer shelf life now.
And again, with a lack of contact being allowed, situations like the Peyton Manning situation, which is a large impetus for why we're seeing these rulings, are much less likely to occur.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Peyton Manning, so Peyton Manning, I assume, obviously pre-recorded a PSA, which I don't know if you had the chance to see it or not, but I'm a big Manning fan. I was always a Peyton Manning fan. I think he was one of the reasons why I made the Colts my second favorite team in the NFL. I really loved watching him play with the Colts. And then, man, when he got traded to when he went to the Broncos, I had to stop from vomiting just because one of my favorite players ever was now playing for a team I absolutely despised.
Amen.
But anyway, yeah, Manning did this PSA, which was pretty cool, about how he was congratulating Drew Brees, but he was like, I'm excited now. He says, now I have the TD record, and the guy in the background says, well, not for long. So just be ready. I'm sure that's going to be eclipsed by Drew Brees at some point. I think they said he's at
499 right now.
Yeah, Tom Brady's got 500. Drew Brees has 499, but the leader, Peyton Manning, has 539. So we're about 40 away. So anyway, congratulations to Drew Brees. Congratulations to the Saints for having such a steady quarterback.
I will say that I think that it's very easy to make it, not to minimize what he's done, which some people may take me as doing, because yes, he plays in an air raid offense, there's this, that, and the other. But he's been doing this year after year with different receivers. He's done this with a Marcus Colston, now doing it with Michael Thomas, and a lot of different guys in between besides them. So, you can't take away the fact that he is running this offense and doing it really, really. He's a guy who is probably going to be both overrated and underrated at the same time.
Yeah. As we go through the season, I'm sure these numbers are going to probably fall a little bit lower than where they're at right now. But if you look at his stats, his passing stats for the 2018 season, his completion percentage is 77.9, which is the most he's ever had. He also has a quarterback rating of 122.3. And that is easily the best he's had. So I'm sure that's going to probably fall just a little bit as the games wear on. We're 5 weeks in now. So, but still, he's on pace to do very, very well. 1,658 yards.
I tell you what, though, wouldn't it be something if the guy who came and eclipsed his record is Phillip Rivers? Phillip Rivers is sitting around 55,000 passing yards, I believe, or so for his career. So that's roughly 15 to 20,000 behind Drew Brees. Rivers' average is better than 4,000 yards a year, so certainly not out of the question that could happen.
No way. I'm telling you what, Phillip Rivers has always been a guy that I thought was a very, very dependable quarterback. It's just a matter of getting the right guys around him, in my opinion. And he has no problem airing it out, but you never know. Next year we could be talking about somebody else who has a great year and is on the cusp of doing this. So the next big thing will be this TD race between Brady and Brees, just to see who ends up with the most at the end of the season. So we'll probably be talking about that as we wind down 2018. But all right, well, let's go ahead. I'll get my my second story out of the way here, and that is Mason Crosby and the Green Bay Packers running into some kicker woes. Now, I've already talked about the Browns and their woes there a couple games ago, but Mason Crosby had one of the I watched the highlights there shortly before we started this podcast. I wanted to see what the game looked like because I knew there was the story coming out of there as to what the kicker for the Green Bay Packers ran into, but I wanted to see it with my own eyes. So, all right, so here we go. I want to break it down for you here. So Mason Crosby misses a field goal. His first field goal attempt goes just left. and then it goes off the upright. Then we have a 38-yarder. It started out straight, then immediately veers off to the right. Okay, so that's 2. I'm counting right there. He make that 3 because he had the first one went just left, then the other one went off the upright, and then the one veered to the right after it went straight. So there's 3 field goals that he misses. Lines up for a 4th one. Misses this one off the left upright, and right there's 12 points that have been left off the board for the Packers in a division game at the Lions. Okay, that's 12 points left off the board, and the score right now at that time was 31 Lions, Packers 20. So there's only 11-point difference with a little less than 4 to go in the 4th. So then he lines up to try a 56-yarder, and that one is wide right. This guy goes 1 for 5 because at the end, I think like with seconds left, he actually puts one through the uprights. They don't even rely on him to do the extra points. When they finally, I think it's after the 3rd field goal he missed, they got down there, and Rodgers, who, by the way, is nursing a knee injury right now, and I just saw a story where they said that there was a bit of a setback. Not that he's going to be out of a game or anything, but apparently rehab continues on this knee for Rodgers. So Rodgers is not entirely too mobile, but somehow, again, this man is able to try and bring them from the depths of a serious loss to maybe salvaging a win here. He gets down there, they score. I think they're down 21-0 at that point. So they just say, or maybe it was 24-0, but they don't even rely on the kicker. It's 2 points from there on out. Davante Adams, the receiver for Green Bay, was just outstanding. Some of the catches that he made kept this Green Bay Packers alive, and you never count Aaron Rodgers out. Unfortunately, with all these missed field goals, these guys just never had a chance to get back into it. So the kicker woes continue, but then we have on the other side of the spectrum, we got Graham Gano.
You know, I was keeping mindful to score because it was a game where Carolina was expected to rout the Giants. You know, I get local coverage of the Giants where I live. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at the score, and all of a sudden I'm seeing this 30, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is close. I got to tune in for the end of this. Sure enough, I tune in as Carolina makes one last-ditch play to get to the sideline and get out of bounds, and they're looking at a 63-yard field goal, and I'm just like, wouldn't it be something if they hit this? Gano just puts the boot up, and as they show the camera angle, I said, oh my God, it's good, and it goes through, and the Giants, for the 2nd consecutive year, lose on a last-second, almost miracle-long field goal.
Wow.
This was last year against the Eagles at the Meadowlands. Jake Elliott, who was a rookie last year, put a 61-yarder through to score in the last seconds of the game to beat the Giants.
Wow. So yeah, that Carolina game, my goodness, just kind of give everybody an idea. A lot of people had double digits. Actually, everybody had double digits on that game and took Carolina, except for Hobo Samurai Teasley, the Giants fan. He has 4 on the Giants, and could you imagine where things – he would be at 64 right now, and, I mean, he would be definitely up in at least the middle, if not close to the top 5 ending this week if things would have changed there. Instead of eating dead last right now, he is a bottom feeder, and we'll talk about that as we get into the standings for the week and the overall picture. Pat Mullin, all right, so I talked about the kickers' woes, Packers getting upset by the Lions. What did you bring to the table here? What did you want to talk about?
So the big thing to me is people were really excited about Deshaun Watson's sophomore season. He was looking so great last year before he had that unfortunate ACL injury.
Yeah.
And people were really excited to see what he could do this year when healthy with a new team in front of him, head coach Bill O'Brien. Unfortunately, what I saw from him on Sunday night was that he is absorbing a lot of very clean, very hard hits in a situation where we've been doing everything where we can as a league in terms of the NFL to try to minimize those things. He ate some horrific shots from the Cowboys defenders. It was like some of them were scary. You thought he was going to be taken out.
Oh, jeez.
You know, drafting Deshaun Watson was a move to draft a long-term franchise quarterback from the Texans. Head coach Bill O'Brien should very much be on the hot seat because of how he's using Deshaun and what he's letting him get put through. You don't let your franchise quarterback get hit like that, get beat up like that, because pretty soon he turns into Robert Griffin.
He's not going to be your quarterback for much longer if that's the case.
No, and we talked about guys not getting contacted or minimal contact. This is the extreme opposite of that. He's getting hit full on by safeties, by linebackers, just crushed on these, option runs and what have you. And I get that his instinct a lot of times is still to run outside the pocket, but nobody's coaching him to avoid that contact, to slide, to get out of bounds. That's going to take away years from his career and potentially end his career early if he keeps absorbing hits like this.
I'm just looking here. I see where Brandon Weeden is saying that he's ready to go. Brandon Weeden, that's a name I've heard before. But yeah, I mean, so they're saying that obviously the concern about his health and well-being because they may have to, if he continues to get hit like he is, he's coming out and Weeden's going in. Houston Texans fans, I'm sorry, but Brandon Weeden is a backup for a good reason. He's really not going to win you too many games, I don't think, because I've seen it on my team back in the day. But then again, I mean, Deshaun Watson, I remember last year, man. I remember watching him play and some of the amazing stuff that he was doing. And I was like, dude, the Texans are going to be a contender for the Super Bowl. They're definitely going in the playoffs. And then he had that injury that took him out. That team, I think, fell apart from that point forward. There just wasn't any saving that season. And
no, he really was that team.
And then we have this year, if you're not protecting this guy, I mean, wow. Was it when you were watching these hits happen? Was it just a failure of the offensive line?
In a very minimal part, yes. But What concerned me more were the open field hits he was taking. Because, again, he's not being coached to run out of bounds, slide, evade contact by any means you have to.
Oh, well, I imagine if he isn't learning by practice, he's going to be learning the hard way. I need to get out of that dude's way. I need to do something. And unfortunately, it may be a situation where it could be too little too late, and he's out either for a few games or out for the season. Let's hope that changes. But, yeah, you don't want to see that happen. So, anything else there, Pat?
No, that was really what I had.
All right, Pat Mullin. We need to get your lock and we need to get your upset pick for the week before we get out of here. So let us take a look at the schedule and you tell our listeners who is the lock for Week 6 in the NFL.
So Week 6 to me is one of the bigger favorite heavy weeks of the schedule we've gone through. If you look at the matchups as they play out, so for me, if I'm picking my lock of the week, it's going to be the Chicago Bears over the Miami Dolphins in Miami. The Monsters of the Midwest.
They're going down to Miami, and they're going to be facing the Dolphins. Let me look at this real quick. I want to see, what are the records here? There's what? Lost one?
The Bears are 3-1.
3-1, and there we go. Okay, and Miami 3-2. And Chicago going into Miami to beat them. Now, you always surprise me here because I always think that your lock is an upset. What's your upset of the week?
I'm not really loving the underdog this week, to be honest. But if there's a game to keep an eye on for me, it's going to be the possibility that the Tennessee Titans can beat the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh,
and
boy.
It's going to be based really on two matchups. Each of them is a wide receiver against a cornerback. You're going to watch John Brown from the Ravens against Malcolm Butler from the Titans. Malcolm Butler's been an issue, and he's given up a lot of touchdowns to guys who run like Brown, long, streaky routes. So if Butler is able to get safety help over the top, they may be able to take that element away from the Ravens, who haven't run the ball all that well. On the other side, you have Corey Davis has been the only real consistent receiving threat from the Titans, who are going to be without Delaney Walker, playing against Jimmy Smith. who has been a good corner in the past and came back last week to try to provide a difference. But he looked a little bit lost in the mud at times against different Cleveland receivers when they gave him different looks. So if Davis is able to separate himself from Jimmy Smith, then we might see some consistency out of the Titans. And if they can get Dion Lewis going, get some play action, we may see the Titans be able to pull this one off in Tennessee.
All right, buddy. Well, let's go ahead. We'll jump into talking about what happened in the Pigskin Pick'em for Week 5. So here we go. We're going to quickly break down the week. Pat, you step in here with any commentary. You're more than welcome to do so. As I mentioned before, sitting in last place, aside from our good buddy Big Ben, who's actually doing pretty decent when it comes to pick percentage this year. I think he's in like the top 3.
He would be, well, there's a first place tie between myself and White Dwayne, and then he is actually behind us.
Oh, wow. So he's top 3 right there. But aside from Big Ben, let's start with Hobo Samurai coming in 15th this week. Really hurting as he comes in last, only missing 6 games, which was pretty much the average. At least some of the top guys in the top 5 were missing 6 games. But he lost 53 points on 4 of those 6. So
I see four double-digit weights that he lost out on.
Yeah, he had a rough week. He needs to turn things around. 14th spot goes to NFL Super Pro, who was doing fairly decent the early part of this season. He missed his last 2 games, costing him 6 points and a few spots. Then 13th to 10th sits Wilvis, the Perfect Storm, Dwayne Williams, and Freebird, respectively, with only 4 points between them and a tie for 10th between Dwayne and Freebird. I would say Freebird's big-time faith in Houston getting it done in overtime helped boost him to 10th from near last before the game started. So that definitely helped him out. 5 points separate 9th to 5th. Coming up from the bottom sits Mamaw Cat, SBP Ronnie, Steel Curtain, and a tie for 5th between Go Luck Yourself and Stizzy Stompers. Sunday's game would have went a little differently. Steel Curtain's 2 points on Dallas would have had them possibly in the top 3. Unfortunately, that is not where they sit. And look at that. Pat, I know I sent you a message. We had a 3-way tie for second place, and I assume it all came down to scores and the whatnots there at the end where you do the tiebreakers as to where they were placed. But the 3-way tie goes to Sawin, Thug and Harmony, and, of course, Totally 80s Pat, each with 87 points. Now, Pat, I kind of looked at what you did here. You were kind of suffering early in the games, and then, like, right at the end, 11 points is gained by picking Minnesota and your upset pick from last week, Arizona. So that shot you straight up in there to second to be amongst those guys. So, and big props to you, sir, for taking 7 points on Arizona. You weren't kidding.
I was not. I was confident that they were going to win. I didn't want to put too heavy a weight on it when I felt there were other games I could weight heavier that would pay off a little better. Some did, one did not.
Well,
but it wound up working out for the best because it got me a pretty high spot. And out of everybody, I think there were a few of us who listened to my tip on picking Arizona, but I put the most faith in them with 7 points.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And our winner for the second week in a row, Raider Nation 77, beating second place by 2 points. He missed a total of 6 games, but keeping them all single digits, and he really only had two of those losses that were above 5 points. He was also one of 4 people that took the Browns for the week, and one of 6 that had faith in Arizona getting it done, all of which gave him the edge that he needed. So there we go. That is the week in a nutshell. Week 5 right there.
Second strong week in a row for me.
Yes, sir.
I went from missing no double-digit picks last week to 1, which is a bit upsetting. But when I look at the picks, only 2 people took Buffalo, and I don't think they took them as anything more than a hope that everybody picks Tennessee, because there's not a heavy amount of weight on either of them.
Teasley had 1 point on him, and NFL Super Pro had 6. Again, we'd be singing a different tune if Dallas and Washington. Well, the Dallas game, that was an overtime game, if I remember correctly. If that would have went differently, Super Pro would have probably been up there. But
it would also look different if Mason Crosby had hit his field goals.
But that is not what happened, ladies and gentlemen. That is not what happened. All right, so let's get into the overall here. Taking a look, again, going from bottom to top, SBP Ronnie still sitting in last, but he is gaining on Hobo Samurai, who sits in 14th, while Freebird is trying to put some distance between both of them. He's 5 points ahead of Hobo in 13th right now. Raider Nation sits in 12th. He's won 2 weeks, so he's trying to gain some ground on the rest of the field here, but he's still sitting in 12th. And Sawin's in 11th. They haven't moved since last week, but only 8 points separate the two, so that's kind of a close race there for 11th. The Perfect Storm drops a spot to 10th, while Thug and Harmony takes his place at 9th, only separated by 6 points between the two. 8th through 6th by a mere 9 points is Mammal Cat, who stayed steady for the week, NFL Super Pro, who dropped 2 spots to 7th, and Steel Curtain, who gained a spot to 6th. Now, looking at 5 all the way to 1st, the top 5 is actually still a very tight race, only separated by 8 points total. Starting in 5th, dropping a spot, is Dwayne Williams. Dropping 3 spots, and by far the one that suffered the most this week, Wilvis sits in 4th. So he went from 1st to 4th, I believe. And then right after that sits our best performer of the week, and that is totally 80s Pat, who shot up 3 spots to 3rd place. Just behind myself, Stizzy Stompers, who I gained a spot and is only ahead of 3rd. I'm only ahead of you by 1 point, sir. 1 point in 2nd place. And our new leader for the week, Go Luck Yourself, gained a spot to take over the top position. But again, this is all shaky ground, as the landscape of the top 3 is only secured by 1 point between each position. So one of us has a great week in the top 5, and that could really rattle those standings. So be ready come next week. If you do well, there's a very good chance you can move up top. 5th place could be sitting in 1st real easily next week. So good luck to everybody. Then that kind of concludes our coverage of the overall. Pat, you got anything you'd like to say before we get out of here?
This is the fun part about the weights that we put behind these games, ranging right now from 15 to 1, is that if you look at the top 3 performers, we're separated by 1 weighted point each between myself, our illustrious host Jesse Starcher, and Go Luck Yourself. And if you look at our Pick'em records, I'm at 47 and 29 for the year. Jess at 44 and 32. Go Luck Yourself, a game behind that at 43 and 33. Now,
completely upside down compared to what the points are showing. You would be in 1st if that was the case.
But it's all about how confident are you in those picks, and are you willing to put your points where your mouth is.
That's right. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and sign on out of here. Nice, quick episode. Anything else you'd like to say, sir?
Let's just sign on out.
All right. For Totally 80s, Pat Mullin, I'm Jesse Starcher. I want to thank everybody for listening to the Pigskin Pick'em 2018 Week 5 rundown. We're going to catch you Week 6. Have a good one. Bye-bye.